Hey, it's Nick and Eric, and it's time for the 2023 24 Hours of Lemons season recap. This is the video that literally everybody on the internet has been waiting for.
Well, okay.
As always in Lemons, the real highlights isn't what we do, it's what you, the participants, do, and in some cases, do for the first time. Here are some of the notable firsts in Lemons that happened in 2023.
Gotta start with the T-Drive Ford Tempo of Cheese Bolt Enterprises. We had our first EV under the new EV rules, that was Arc Blast's Datsun 620. We had our first Suzuki Kizashi from Wisconsin Crap Racing. That was hella sweet.
We've seen a bunch of Chevettes, but we've never seen a Pontiac 1000. Salty Thunder brought one of those to High Plains. We had the first ever Lemons Dajibon. That was veteran team Bernal Dads at Sonoma. And we had our first ever Dodge Magnum, this one with a mid-engine slant 6, built by Mofoco.
Team Winnebago then brought the first Pontiac G5. We are just missing a G3 for the complete set in Lemons. We had our first town car since 2010, and there were two of them, including the Jinkin Jounjar. And the Mavericks brought us the first Ford Maverick, kind of. It was also Lemons' first C5 Corvette.
The first Mercury Montego was brought to NOLA under the Purelator the Urinator team entry. Valve Tap Racing has raced This was the first time they raced two. We also had the first Lemons Subaru Baja from the Baja Banditos.
Grimace Racing brought our first Mazda 2. Our first Toyota Matrix was JDM themed, which was hella sweet, from Marriage Counseling. Not only did we have our first BMW E90 3 Series, we had like 5 of them this year. This highlights what we've said before, that BMWs go from daily driver to Lemons car almost overnight.
We had our first Lemons race in the state of Oklahoma at Hallett. That race featured the Boomer Sooner, Joe Exotic, and Oklahoma the Musical themes. We had our first ever Elkhart Lake block party that went along with the Road America race. And the first time ever we ran 3 different configurations of a track in a single race weekend. We did that at Thunderhill.
It's not just firsts that we wanted to recognize, there were also many triumphant returns after years away. We wanted to highlight some of those. We'll start with the Rambler. This is the Rambler that traveled around the country many years ago. It finally came back. Also, the faithful replica of the Homer from The Simpsons return. That's one of my personal favorites. That was awesome. And Marge, Pony Keg's Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Brougham finally came back after 4 years away.
Rotson Racing's Datsun B210ZX, which is a B210 with a period fiberglass big fender flare body kit. It came back to NOLA. At CMP, we saw the return of the faux DeLorean Mitsubishi Starion, which is an incredible DeLorean Back to the Future replica. And we saw the 4.1 Buick V6 swapped Porsche 914 of the Sheep Shaggers return.
Also at Road America, Dave Morrow's fur-covered Gremlin came back for a little bit. And the Racing for Nichols Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra also returned after like 7 years away.
There's the car! There's the car! Tan Sierra!
Sonoma Raceway in December was the site of 3 triumphant returns, including Cerveza Racing, which immediately returned to its overall winning ways. We saw Crazy Mike's Scrubby the VW Beetle, and the Hasselhoffs in their shockingly stock Toyota Paseo.
And before we move on to the champions, we wanted to talk about some great single race performances that were really at the tip top of the year. At Autobahn, we had 2 flathead-powered, modern-ish pony cars faced off against each other, a Chrysler flat 6-powered Ford Mustang with the engine out of an old airport tug racing against a turbocharged Chrysler-powered Chevy Camaro. It was a matchup for the ages. The Nash Metropolitan that won IOE at Buttonwillow was incredible, one of the slowest cars ever in Lemons, and it crushed a bunch of BMWs. And the British Empire Strikes Back Sunbeam Alpine won IOE at New Jersey on the Le Mans weekend. That was hella sweet.
At MSR Houston, Simp Motorsports racing the only Jelly Bean generation Mazda 929 in Lemons ran flawlessly and won the IOE. And the Velocipaster Celica Supra also won an IOE at NCM. This is the only Lemons car we're aware of, themed on the Velocipaster B movie, which involves a priest that turns into a dinosaur. And the always suffering Chotus.
Chotus.
Long ago, they got upgraded to Class B, and they finally won the class.
On the East Coast, we had both an AMC Hornet win Class B and a Jeep Cherokee win Class C in like 9th place overall. Those were awesome for AMC fans. Another long-suffering team on the West Coast, Tired Iron Racing, finally won in their 51st Lemons race with their Miata. And also, Troy Hogan, yet another long-suffering Lemons racer, has been trying to win overall since 2008. He finally did it, and did it in 2 races back-to-back.
It was all worth it, right?
It's all maybe not.
There were 2 notable class wins for Nissan products, including a Class B win at Thompson for an Altima, and an overall Class A win for a Maxima at Road Atlanta. And longtime Lemons tech guy, pit lane boss, general all-around go-to guy, Dale Strimple, drove in Lemons for the very first time at Thompson. And it went well.
All right, on to the moment you've all been waiting for.
Well, okay.
Our National Drivers Champion for 2023 was Neil Losi. You may remember from last year that Neil ran all of the 2022 races. This year he ran 13 more like a complete lunatic and added 14 more Lemons cars to his portfolio, such as it is. If you're keeping score at home, that gives him 94 Lemons races and 104 different Lemons cars. Managed to score 74 points this year. Also brought his totals up to 22 indexes of affluency. Pretty sure that's the most of anyone. What can we say? Neil's got great tastes. And here are your National Drivers Championship standings.
And the national champion team, they also went back-to-back. This is Breaking Bad Racing. Off of their 2022 championship, they returned in 2023 with their giant fleet of hoopties. That includes a Toyota Tercel, Ford Festiva, Mazda MX-3, Honda Accord, Mustangs, Miatas, BMWs, a bunch of stuff. By our admittedly fuzzy math, they own somewhere between 10 and 15 cars and have run as many as 8 in a single race together. We've seen them everywhere from New Jersey to Colorado, so there's a good chance that you have raced or will race in the future against Breaking Bad at some point. And here are the rest of the National Team Championship standings.
We also have regional championships for each of our 5 regions, so here's the rundown on those champions.
The Constructors Championship, this is a very boring calculation of points scored by each constructor, and for the umpteenth year in a row, BMW was the winner. A couple of things to note on that. One, we've said before, for every BMW that wins, there's like 5 that finish in last. And also, this is the lowest point total for BMW in recent memory, so these other brands, Mazda, Toyota, Ford, Honda, you're right at their heels.
We also have the Real Constructors Champion, which we give out as a kind of non-point based performance that impressed us most, and we had several strong showings of note this year. There was General Motors with 7 indexes of affluency and 5 Class C wins, Ford with 6 and 5 of those same categories, and also we wanted to point out that Suzuki, Nash, and Sunbeam all scored 100% IOEs for their entry this year.
But really, nothing could possibly be more spectacular than the awkward, slow, and magnificent performances of Mitsuoka in 2023. Now, there was only one Mitsuoka in Lemons in 2023. There's only one Mitsuoka in Lemons in general. It's the Vute from Lost in Translation, but it raced twice and was the star of the show both times. It won the IOE in its debut race at Thunderhill. That's another 100% IOE rate for Mitsuoka. it can't be beat. And plus, look at it.
We also give out a Deconstructors Champion, and this year it goes to Subaru. Now, we saw a number of stinky performances from all kinds of brands, heavy emphasis on the Volkswagen Auto Group, but the consistently blah performances for any brand other than Subaru, and it's kind of long overdue for recognition. Sure, there was a Class B win this year, but that's not really the story. Really, this gets to the heart of something Lemons regulars figured out about 10 to 12 years ago. A car's reputation as a daily driver carries absolutely no weight with regard to its reliability in endurance racing. Now, Subaru fans might take some solace in outscoring AMC products in the top 10 by a single point this year, except there were 3 times as many Subaru entries, and they got their asses beat by Audi also. That one's got a sting.
The grand prize for the annual Lemons Awards is the Coppa di Bondo. It's just really the best team. It's the team with the best attitude, the best cars, the best costumes, the best theme. The team that we think best represents the spirit of what we're trying to do. And sometimes we don't even know what we're trying to do, so it's good to have this reminder. First off, a few honorable mentions. Salty Thunder Racing. They were the 2019 Coppa di Bondo winners. They came with a 3-car effort at the first race at High Plains Raceway in Colorado. That were 3 Pontiacs. A Pontiac 1000, a Pontiac Fiero, and a Pontiac Canadian, which is their interpretation of what the Pontiac C4 Corvette would have been had it been sold differently in the Canadian market. All very high concept. They finished 4th overall with that Corvette at the full 24-hour race later in the year at HPR. Just always a good showing from Salty Thunder.
Another honorable mention goes to We're Just Here for the SR. They brought 3 more awesome themes on their Chevy Blazer from Nebraska. They had the Boomer Schooner at Hallett. They had John Denver's Airplane at Colorado. And they did Road American Gladiators. Get on their level, everybody. They were awesome.
Another honorable mention was Loose Nuts. They added 2 more Halloween Meets Gasoline wins for a total of 5, and they raised over $5,000 for Lemons Love at their final race of the year at Road Atlanta.
One last honorable mention, we're going to talk about Stephen Hebert and his collective group who run out of Louisiana. Now, they won an IOE at Barber with their Mercedes SL. They won an IOE at NOLA with their Mercury Montego. They won Class C at NOLA with a V12 Mercedes. And they almost became the first team ever to win a class with a big block engine in their 77 Monaco. Yep, hasn't been done yet. You could still be the first. They keep adding cars. We know they have at least 3 more coming in 2024, quickly becoming one of the best Lemons teams.
Despite all of those great performances, they all came up short to a very deserving champion. The 2023 Coppa di Bondo goes to Van and Ball, the Great American Broad Trip.
Now, the idea came from a road trip that team captain Zach Caldwell did with his bros, hence the Great American Broad Trip. And like most good things, the name came first. The Great American Broad Trip would be this. Zach would run 4 races on consecutive weekends, driving a road trip between every race with his street-registered caravan.
In mid-May, Zach left his home in Kentucky for an epic street driving trip in the plated and registered Dodge Caravan, which his family has owned since new. He drove from Kentucky to California for a Thunderhill, then the very next weekend drove to High Plains in Colorado, the very next weekend drove to NJMP in New Jersey, and the very next weekend drove to Gingerman in Michigan, and of course raced at every single Lemons race on each of those weekends.
Along the way, he broke countless parts, burned through several parts stores' supplies of brake pads, gave lots of rookies their first taste of Lemons, got help from dozens of new Lemons friends, and somehow made it home in one piece, and then he ran 2 more races in the second half of the year.
So that's pretty amazing on its own, but it turns out Zach's 2023 Lemons season was just a warm-up. In 2024, he intends to take the Dodge Caravan to every single race on the calendar. If you think you can do better than that, you might win a Coppa di Bondo of your own.
So, the 2024 season is looming. Here are some things to look ahead to with 23 races and 5 rallies on the calendar. First of all, we're going to be back at Sebring in Florida in May. In April, the Carolina Motorsports Block Party returns in Camden. And we are hoping to have the block party back in Elkhart Lake for Road America. That is in September. There's 20 more races. All of them are going to be a good time. Check out our schedule on 24hoursoflemons.com and make sure you follow us right here on YouTube.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?